Come along, rise and shine. Come along and rise and shine. Come on and shine. Come along and ride on a light walker Johnny. Light walker Johnny. Yeah. Come along and ride on a light walker Johnny. Yeah.
Well, welcome back to the Sunday Soul Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lisa Brewer, and we have back with us once again for a follow-up part to the wonderful, the powerful, the amazing Randi Lee. Hello, Randi. How are you today?
Aloha, Lisa. I'm so excited to be back with you today.
This is just amazing. Like when we last left off, talking about human design and talking about how the different types, how they play out within our lives, and then kind of tie that into astrology, like that opened my eyes up, my heart up, my being, just in fabulous, fabulous ways. And so I want to thank you for that because that just, I mean, wow, amazing, amazing. And today we're going to get into gene keys, as opposed to kind of diving back into human design in depth. But if you want, can we just give a little synopsis about how these two kind of like how they intertwine and how they're all interconnected, human design and gene keys?
Absolutely. So the gene keys are a system that was actually born out of human design. So human design itself, like we talked about before, is a synthesis of these different systems, incorporating astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, the tree of life, the chakra system, biomechanics, genetics, all of those things. And what human design did that was pretty unique was it brought together imprinting of two different dates. So in traditional astrology, we normally look at like the imprinting from your date of birth. In human design, we're looking at the imprinting from both your date of birth and also what we call your design date, which is this prenatal chart, this 88 degrees before you were born. And so that brings together your design of both your conscious and your unconscious, and the design of your body and the design of your mind. And so what the gene keys does is it takes that information, that imprinting of both your birth date and your design date, and it gives you a hologenetic profile that's your mapping of your unique genius, your wounding, your shadows, and also the true essence that you're here to express in the world. And the way that the gene keys and human design are connected is that in human design, we have 64 gates within our body graph. And the gates are based on, I think we talked about this a little bit in the previous episode, but they're based on the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And in the gene keys, it takes those same 64 hexagrams and the archetypes that we see in the gates, but it expands on it and it gives us a spectrum of consciousness to understand the frequency of the energy that's moving through these genes. Because what the gene keys are, they're actually each related to a specific amino acid in the body. So you can see these genetic groupings of these codes and how they actually work in the body and the frequency that you're expressing them at. So we have the shadow frequency, which is really like the shadow, which is like the frequency of fear, that frequency of, kind of being a victim to your environment, not taking responsibility for the things in your life. That's that shadow frequency. And then we have the gift frequency, which is born actually out of the shadow. So one of the core teachings of the gene keys is that every shadow contains a gift. And it's through us going into the shadow that we release this gift, which is the higher frequency of open-heartedness. And it's really what, like, the most practical element of the gene keys. It's what we're here, like our unique genius that we're here to express into the world. And it comes from that open-hearted place. And the highest frequency is called the Siddhi. And the Siddhi is really like full enlightenment, spiritual realization. And it's actually not necessarily the goal to try to strive for the Siddhi, because we can't actually strive to get to the Siddhi, because we don't get to the Siddhi the same way we get from the shadow to the gift. You know, when we're getting to the Siddhi, it really is more of a surrender. It's more something that is an act of grace that just happens as we give ourselves up to this process of really embracing all aspects of our life. Because once we start to embrace our shadows, we see that the shadows themselves are actually a divine gift that awaken us to our true potential.
Okay, that's a lot. Okay, let's roll this back.
Yeah, we can break it down.
Yes, let's break it down. So 64 gene keys, right? That correspond to 8 gates.
64 gates. We have
64
64
gates.
So we have 64 gates in the body graph, and we have 64 hexagrams of the I Ching and 64 gene keys. So they're all they all basically come from the gates of human design, and the gene keys, the 64 gene keys, come from the I Ching, which is the book of changes. So it comes from this ancient wisdom, this ancient Chinese wisdom that really gives us these patterns of understanding our evolution as human beings.
Okay. All right. I've got you there. Now, and we'll just say the base, okay, for lack of a better term. At the base, we have the shadow keys, right? So what this brings me in mind of like Stevie Wonder songs in the key of life. Like they're different keys, right? Different frequencies that we have that are at work within our being, right? Am I correct? Okay, good. All right. We got it. Now, I loved how you were talking about this actually helps us, like the gift keys are born out of the shadow. I've been toying with this idea that the fact that that shadow energy is just dense light that's just waiting to be released. So that seems to kind of prove the theory that just has been rolling around in me, that this is really just dense light energy that's, when we release it and we, like you said, take responsibility and accountability, right, for our lives, then from that we find the gifts. As you're moving through this, but if someone was going to apply this to their life, I assume we start with shadow? Is there some sort of graphical, how do you even get these keys? How do you even get this information about somebody?
Yeah, so that's where that birth information that comes from those dates of your birth date and your design date, your conscious and your unconscious design, it comes together to give you in the gene keys what we call your hologenetic profile. So we'll give you a mapping of specific keys that were imprinted at the time of your birth and then during your design date. So there's like some positions, like for instance, we have, like your normally like what we call your conscious sun and earth. This is like the date of your birth, where the positions of the sun and the earth were. But it also looks at your prenatal sun and earth. So that 88 degrees before you were born. So it looks at these archetypes and it gives you that spectrum of consciousness for your specific keys. So for instance, I have in my conscious sun, which we call in the gene keys, your life's work. This is like really what you're here to do. So mine is in the 54th gene key. And the 54th gene key moves from the shadow of greed to the gift of aspiration to the Siddhi of ascension. And I can really see how a huge element of my life has been moving from this shadow of greed and transforming my relationship with greed. Because when I first found out that that was, one of my primary shadows, I was totally triggered. And I was like, wait, I can't let anybody know. Like, does everyone know that this is it? Like, I was like, I got to get rid of this. I got to get rid of this. This has got to be the worst shadow, and I think a lot of people feel that way about their shadows. They're like, oh
Right.
my, this is the worst one.
Right.
And I was like, this has got to be the worst one. I got to get rid of it. And so I actually spent a lot of, the first bit of my journey with the Gene Keys trying to eliminate greed, which is actually not the whole point of the Gene Keys at all. It's actually to embrace greed. And so when I embraced my greed, I saw that my greed was actually just a hunger for more. It was a hunger for more. And sometimes it could be directed in just material accumulation, but often it was actually this desire to know my truest self, this aspiration to actually ascend, to reach that state of enlightenment, which is the highest expression of my life's work, is ascension. So but within that ascension is the greed, is that shadow, right? Like, we go from greed to aspiration to ascension, and really they're all one. They're not actually separate, but we don't see that, especially when we're at that shadow frequency. But when we can learn to actually embrace it, that's where that gift can actually emerge. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense because I talk a lot about when we're doing shadow work, that it's not that you're ever going to completely get rid of your shadow. You came here, you incarnated here purposefully with that energy embedded within you, purposefully. And it is not that we need to just eradicate it, because you can't. It's all about the transmutation. It's all about learning and then releasing. And then I call it a reintegration. So while there's a level of, in this case, greed, to me, it would be, okay, well, what I would say, well, what did we need to learn from this? Or what was the purpose? Great. And we'll deal with how it's shown up until that time. And then we can say, you know what, greed, you may have, you protected me in certain areas, right? You were useful to me in these areas, but I no longer need you to rise up and quote unquote protect me. You're not serving me anymore. And we then transmute that then into the next level, right? Into aspiration. And then we begin to reintegrate it, transmute it some more into ascension. And then, but we bring this back in now as a holistic kind of energy, rather than this dense weighing me down and always causing certain effects. That's amazing to me. If you're doing this kind of, if you're mapping this, do we all have, I hope I asked this right, do we all have energies in all 64? Are there some more predominant than others? How does that kind of play out in one's mapping of this?
Yeah, so you actually have all 64 of the gene keys at a cellular level.
Okay.
But based on the imprinting that occurs at the time of your birth, and like I said, that 80 degrees before you were born, there's going to be specific keys that are highlighted on your hologenetic profile that are going to give you a specific roadmap for your experience in this lifetime.
Wow.
But it doesn't mean that the other keys don't apply to you or that you don't have them. It's that other ones are likely, it's kind of like there's just a highlighter over those keys. And it's like, hey, pay closer attention to this one. And you're going to see how really they come together to show you your your journey in this lifetime.
Wow.
You know, it really shows us, like, we have in the gene keys, we have 3 different sequences on this, in this hologenetic profile. And when we move through the hologenetic profile, we call it the golden path, because we're moving through these sequences on the golden path to really unlocking our true potential, our unique genius.
Yeah.
And the first sequence is our activation sequence, which really deals with grounding us in the physical plane and activating our purpose and putting our genius out into the world. And then the second sequence is the Venus sequence, which is all about healing through relationships. And the Venus sequence goes actually to the core of our wounding that occurred in childhood that caused us to create these defense mechanisms and, you know, put up barriers and start to close off our heart. So it gives us this mapping to actually go into those really tender aspects, those tender part of our life, those tender wounds, and begin to heal them, which allows us to open up our heart, soften our heart. And that leads us into the final sequence, which is the Pearl sequence, which is about activating prosperity. So this is about bringing prosperity through service. But it's really only when we come through the Venus with an open heart that we're able to activate that true prosperity in our lives.
Wow, that is amazing. So it sounds to me like the highlighted gene keys would be, I would translate that to like our north node in our birth chart, where we're meant to like evolve to. That's the evolutionary step we're to evolve to. I'm kind of particular to Chiron. Chiron and I have a very unique relationship, I think. And so these are the areas that we came to work on, those wounds that just like lifetime after lifetime. Okay, can we please work on this in this lifetime here? And so it sounds like that's kind of like giving us this, like, this is where what the intention was to learn, experience, what have you, in this incarnation, in this time, right? Am I?
Absolutely. So each of the spheres, what we call in the gene keys, your hologenetic profile contains 11 spheres, and each sphere is represented by a specific imprinting by a specific planet. So like I said, my life's work is represented by my conscious sun. So where the sun was at the time of my birth. So I'm a Capricorn, but we can actually go deeper than just understanding myself as a Capricorn.
Right.
So when we get down to the degrees, that's actually where we can see where the gates are. So specifically, the sun was in gate 54, and an even smaller measurement, because each gate has 6 lines, the sun was in gate 54, line 6. So it gives a very precise measurement of where my sun was. And then it shows me those archetypes of, like I was talking about with the life's work, it's about what you're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to know that, like, a lot of my work is going to be about, helping other people on this spiritual journey of discovering their true and authentic self and that path of ascension, which is ultimately what a lot of my work is doing. So that's going to be like that outward expression of what I'm here to do. But then we have other spheres that represent other aspects of our life. Like our earth is what grounds us. That's really what we're here to learn. So that's represented by the sphere of your evolution. And then we have the sphere of your radiance. This is going to be your prenatal or your unconscious sun. And this is the light that you're here to shine out into the world. And it's really what keeps you healthy. And then we have your purpose sphere, which is really like, instead of like your life's work, which is like this external expression, what you're here to do, your purpose is who you're here to be. This is like a quality of consciousness that you're here to embody, and it's what deeply fulfills you. And that comes from the imprinting of your unconscious, your prenatal earth. So that's just the 4 in what we call the activation sequence. But then we also look at things like Mars, Jupiter, looking at things like that. Because when we're looking at prosperity, that's where Jupiter is really important. When we're looking at some of those, immaturity patterns, those woundings, like that's where Mars can come in. And so you can see how these planetary positions and where your imprinting was, and it's giving, I think, more precise language for you to understand your journey. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because too often the complete novice will just look at their sun sign. Then we learn a little bit more, and then we look at the sun, moon, and the rising. But when you really want to dig down deep into what your natal chart, the wealth of information your natal chart has for you in this lifetime, you have to take into account all the planets with all the aspects. And that's the only way for me that I'm really able to kind of, when I'm working with people, to really be able to give a full picture of what I see and how I see this. This is just taking this to like the absolute nth degree, though. For me, this is just like my mind is just blown at this point with what the wealth of information.
Yeah, it really takes it to the next level, because it's helping you understand those elements of your astrology chart to a deeper degree. Because one of the things that I always found challenging with astrology was the generalizations, like, because we are so much more than just, our sun sign, because Capricorns, will express themselves in a multitude of different ways. Absolutely. And that's where understanding like where it was in terms of the gate, and then the specific, because you can look at the gate and that represents the same gene key. So like I said, mine's in gate 54. That's represented by the 54th gene key. So you can look at any of the gates in your human design chart, any of your placements. You can look at your north node, your south node, and then you can get the spectrum of consciousness from the gene keys to understand that journey. So understanding your nodes and like what you're, moving from in your south node, that past life karma that you're bringing into the world. And sometimes we can like, kind of due to excess, that we're here to kind of like let go of, you can see that spectrum of consciousness from the shadow, the gift, and the city, and then the north node that you're moving to. And for me, that always went so much deeper than, okay, my south node is in Scorpio and my north node is in Taurus. It gave me such a deeper understanding of what that actually looked like.
And a more definitive path and purpose, if you will, right, for those placements. Because I was taught, and I firmly believe this, that we placed our planets where we intended for them, like in co-creation with, source, however you want to put it. But that we purposely made those placements the way that we did for a specific purpose. And that really helps. And you said something else about purpose, which I find very interesting, that our purpose isn't external. Can you expound on that a little bit? Because that blew my mind as well. How does this help us understand that? Doggy.
Yeah, I think that, yeah. Sorry if you hear my dog.
No,
I love this question because I think it's something that we often get confused, as we think that our purpose is something external, something that we're here to do in the world. Yes. And well, I believe we have an external purpose and an inner purpose. And I really believe that our inner purpose should be primary, and that external purpose is secondary. So what I mean by that is like that quality of consciousness that's represented by the sphere of our purpose. And so the quality of consciousness that we bring to our external purpose is actually primary. It's actually fundamental. Because if we're not bringing that quality of consciousness to our doing, then our doing doesn't get the fullest potential that we're actually here to bring.
Right.
So the doing itself doesn't really matter if we're not bringing that quality of consciousness to it.
Wow. Yeah, I was saying, give permission to your purpose to provide for your person. That just gave me a whole new meaning for that. Because we have to give permission to our light, right? We have to give permission to our light, to who we are here to be, to be, to, and that sounds so circular, but it makes perfect sense to me. We have to give permission to ourselves to be who we came here to be.
Yeah, and then the doing can flow from that place.
Right.
And I think often we get that reversed, where the doing is taking the primary seat in our lives, and the quality of consciousness that we're bringing is secondary. And that's totally not the way that we should be doing it. It should, like, for me, if I know that the quality of consciousness I'm going to be bringing to a specific task isn't going to be what I know I can bring, then I won't do that thing. Like, I trust in that flow and that things get done when I'm able to bring my best self into my doing.
Yes. Wow. I'm not sure how much more my mind can handle. Like, I'm just.
Well, I wanted to just get kind of bring it, for you, give you an example of these gene keys and how you can apply it, even just without necessarily having to even understand the whole gene keys hologenetic profile. If you already understand, for instance, your astrology chart and you know your north node, south node. So for you, Lisa, your south node is in Libra, and your north node is in Aries. And in the gene keys, your south node is in gate 48, in the 48th gene key. And this moves from the shadow of inadequacy to the gift of resourcefulness and the city of wisdom. And you're already laughing because you're like, that's it.
This is I'm not sure if those listening or watching can kind of grasp this. But if you guys have ever been, the only way I can equate this is if you've ever sat in church and had someone like me who is prophetic come and just what we always said, read your mail. I don't know you from a can of paint, but because of the unction of the spirit, then I'm reading your mail and telling you your entire life story in 10 seconds. Or you've gone to a magic show or something like that, and this, whatever, hypnotist or something. Literally, that's what just happened to me. It's just yep, that's my life. You got it. Okay, continue, please. So I can continue to get my mind
you're
blown.
here to move from that, right? Because that's the thing, you can get stuck in that inadequacy, and
Yes.
you're here to move from that, to seeing yourself as resourceful, as having this wisdom, and that's going to bring you into your north node, which is in gate 21, the 21st gene key. And the gift there is authority. Through that wisdom, through that resourcefulness, you're becoming an authority. You're really stepping out into that, and that's that path of purpose. That's what you're here to grow and expand into.
What's the city for that one?
The city for that one is Valor.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So you can really that's the power of this, is it can really just give you this frame to understand it at a deeper level and allow yourself to see how you're already living it. It's already happening. You don't even have to do anything. It's there, but you can actually amplify, through understanding these frequencies. You can speed up the process, and you can amplify and really bring out your gifts to their truest expression.
So that sounds super simple to me, and it sounds super simple to you. How does one begin to? Yeah, we'll go here, and then there's I need to circle back around. How does one begin to amplify that? I mean, the awareness is one thing, right? So we start that shadow work, deal with that shadow, and allow then it to, so how does one amplify this to really apply it?
Yeah, I mean, really, awareness is the whole name of the game.
Yeah.
When we become aware of these shadow patterns, that's what allows the gift to start emerging.
Yep.
Because what happens most often is we're ignoring the shadows, or we're, running from them, we're suppressing them, we're rejecting them, instead of allowing them to have a space at the table. Opening our arms to them to really see that they're there to awaken us to our true potential. And only when we embrace them do we allow that gift to emerge. So through our awareness, we begin to allow, accept, and embrace these shadows. And then through that process, our gift is naturally emerging. And that's what this whole process is about, is the more that we can, I see it as like a spiraling, is like we're just continuing to deepen more into our gifts and share that more and more into the world, where we're no longer, or we might fall into the shadow, but we witness it quicker.
Yes.
So we're able to alchemize it. We're able to, not stay in that state, not become a victim to that state.
Yes.
And that's really what the whole process is all about.
Yes, absolutely. There's a verse in the Bible that says your gifts will make room for you. And the way you just explained what our gifts really do for us, that brings a whole new meaning. I say this all the time, guys. We're not tossing away any holy text because there's wisdom in there. We're just unlocking the wisdom.
Man, that's the thing. It's like, I
know.
see it like, I see God in all of this. I see it. It's like, how wonderful that we have this map to understand that, and to give these practical scriptures and ancient wisdom and teachings, to really bring it and ground it into our 3D reality. That's what I see this all about, is we're bringing these higher states and we're grounding it into the 3D.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that we can actually live it and not just aspire to something on the outside of us, that we integrate and alchemize it into our very being. That's been the whole purpose, right? That's the whole thing, right? But so often we put all of this on the outside, or if it doesn't fully align with precisely the way we were taught, or the way that a religious structure wishes for it to be expressed, then we're missing out completely. I feel like you'll get some of it, but you'll never attain the true essence, right? And you'll never, this is so empowering. This is ultimately empowering at this point. And then living the life that we were always intended to live, and that we wanted to live, and that we chose to live. This is our true life of purpose. It's just, it's blowing my mind away. Just absolute. I'm like, okay, gone. Randy, how, and this is a completely off the wall question. You are not expecting this. Do you teach people do you teach human design? Do you teach the gene keys? Is that something that you teach?
That is
how to do it?
The whole thing I do. Absolutely. I feel like I have a very natural gift of being able to bring these systems in a way that is easily understood, because they're very complex systems. And when somebody who's brand new entering into it, it can be very overwhelming and can feel almost like it's inaccessible, because it feels like, how do I actually apply this and bring this into my life? And what I'm all about is making these incredible systems accessible to everyone, so that you're able to unlock the magic that's within you.
I don't think, and I apologize, because I don't think part one, and maybe, who knows, but when we did part one of this a few weeks ago, I grasped that that's what you did, but I didn't really grasp it. And then now I'm grasping it. So it's
all good. I'm so glad.
I'm like, it kind of clicked. So hopefully you guys, if you're listening to part 2, you did listen to part 1. If you haven't listened to part 1, please go in the playlist and find it. It would have aired on February 6th of 2022. Please go back there and find it. And listen to that as well. And Randi continually has ways for us to work together. I will tell you probably by the time this is like recorded or drops, I'll probably be being a student at that point. This is absolutely liberating and fascinating. Like guys, I'm on this podcast, on this channel, wherever you're watching or listening, I'm so about the quantum leaps and so about just expanding and allowing to be free, your true self, your higher self. We don't have to live a life that is contained and controlled by fear, by guilt, by shame, by whatever programming has been, by poverty, lack, not having anybody in your life if that's what you want. Like, we don't have to live those lives. That's not what we came here for. And if we get nothing else from this, just please tap into this wisdom, right? So that you can expand and live your best life in a true way. I got on my soapbox. Let me get down.
No, I love that because it's just so true. And, what can often happen in our journey with the gene keys is we can get stuck in focusing on these shadow patterns. And Richard Rudd, the creator of the gene keys, says that we should really, in our contemplation, only spend 10% focusing on the shadow and spend 90% focusing on the gift and the city. Because, the shadow is going to be easy for us to connect with. Like, we all can, pretty much see that either in our lives or mirrored in the world around us.
Yes.
But what we really need to do is to become intimately connected with these higher frequencies so that we know them just as well as we know the shadow. Yeah. And that's exactly why I created a program that's called Gifts of Gaia. So we meet every week and we actually follow the transit of the earth. So in traditional astrology, we usually just follow the transit of the sun. Like that's kind of where we get our weekly forecast is the energy of the sun.
Right.
And that's like the primary masculine archetype. But we want to bring this to the divine feminine and really bring this to Mother Gaia, bring this to the earth. So we look at each week the gift frequency that's being activated by the earth. So right now, the earth is, when we're recording this, the earth is activating the 7th gene key, and that gift is guidance. And this is really about learning to listen to our own inner guidance, reclaiming our personal power and sovereignty. And, being a guide is really like the true gift of leadership where we're leading others to lead themselves. And so we love to focus on these gift frequencies and how we can actually become a steward to bringing these gifts into the world.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. Now, are we able to connect to that through your website?
Yep. You can get the information for Gifts of Gaia on my website. And I do also have a free community, Embodiment by Design, where I have a few free courses on human design and the gene keys. So if this spoke to you and you want to learn more, I would love to have you inside that community.
Oh, that is just fabulous. That is wonderful. Guys, don't hesitate. Please, her website's going to be down below in the show notes. It's going to be in the descriptions everywhere. Please go over there and become part of this community and a part of this just amazing work. It is life-changing. And we've only spent a couple of hours talking, and it's life-changing for me just in these 2 hours. I thank you and I honor you and I honor the gift that is within and flows from you, because this has just been life changing. Doesn't even begin to describe.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for seeing me and recognizing me and being so open to receiving this wisdom, because it really is life changing. It's completely transformed my entire life in business and has allowed me to connect with my authentic self, which is, I think, my whole life something that I was searching for. And this really gave me the frame to understand what that looked like, that was unique to me, and gave me that permission to give that to myself.
Yes. How beautiful. Randi, any parting words? Any last bits of wisdom you want to give to the community?
I think the final message I just want to leave is that you are perfect, whole, and complete, and that there's no such thing as a mistake. You can never make a mistake. You can never make a wrong turn. You're always exactly where you need to be, and you're always being led to awakening to your fullest potential. So just breathe in this moment, knowing that you're exactly where you need to be.
That's amazing. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Guys, don't forget to connect with Randi down below in the descriptions or in the show notes. And I'll be looking forward to seeing all of you guys, all my community, all y'all. I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys in her community as well. Let's all learn together.
Yes.
Yay. All right, guys. Well, as always, peace, love, blessings, and joy be unto you today, tomorrow, and for all eternity. I love you guys very much. Namaste. Bye, gang.
Aloha.